Oh, hi there. Foodfight is one of the greatest oddities in all of cinema. How can a movie spend over a decade in development, have a solid voice cast, a score by Grammy winner Walter Murphy, cost between $45 and $64 million, full of recognizable brands, and still be the single worst animated movie ever made? The plot is basically Toy Story in a grocery store. At night, the brand mascots come to life, but with the added twist of a mysterious disappearance and a shady new brand in town, threatening everyone's way of life. But somehow, this movie is full of raunchy humor, Nazi-esque imagery, blatantly unfinished animation, had its merchandise released 4 years before the movie, all wrapped up in legend of a real-world theft. The only thing I can compare Foodfight to is watching The Shining or listening to the Beatles. Every time I come back to it, I find a new detail that blows my mind. And Foodfight just keeps giving. Within the last year, new information has come to light that completely changes everything we know about this movie. Shocking revelations of a tie-in video game, multiple books, a complete workprint of the movie, and explicit assets made at the demand of the movie's director, producer, co-writer, and architect of this entire mess, Larry Kasanoff. Let's go. Fittingly, this video is sponsored by Factor. Factor cuts out the stress of meal planning and meal prep with their delicious, never frozen, chef-crafted meals ready to eat in just 2 minutes, delivered right to your door. Choose from a weekly menu of 35 options, including Calorie Smart, Keto, Protein Plus, vegan, and veggie choices, with more than 60 add-ons like snacks, beverages, and breakfasts. All of this with the flexibility of being able to easily add more meals for a week or skip a week entirely. Factor sent me some of their meals and protein shakes, and they are so good. My favorite is their chicken Florentine. The chicken was perfectly cooked, juicy, and just beautifully peppery. Head to factor75.com or click the link below and use code ATL50 to get 50% off your first Factor box and 20% off your next month of orders. Again, that's code ATL50 at factor75.com to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month's order. So yeah, Foodfight is bad, but it had an excuse, a pretty good one at that. In 2002, it was the victim of industrial espionage, where years of work were mysteriously stolen. All the assets, all the scenes, all the models, the entire movie, gone. The film's director, producer, and co-writer, Larry Kasanoff, said, "It was an incredibly complex crime. They got into the cold room, a room within a room within a room." And today, the mystery of who stole Foodfight is the most infamous, unsolved Hollywood mystery. But if the idea of a Mission Impossible style heist to steal a B-tier movie at best sounds unbelievable, that's because it is. This never happened. Larry Kasanoff lied to justify why the movie was missing deadlines and as an excuse to start over with production. But at a glance, it does kind of seem believable, because there are clearly 2 different versions of Foodfight. A well-animated cartoon with life and attention to detail that can be seen in the movie's trailer, and this ugly, stiff final product that was released in 2012. And it was long believed that this better looking version of Foodfight was the stolen movie. But the truth is that between 2000 and 2004, only a 7-minute sizzle reel was made to get investors interested in the movie. All of this work was scrapped intentionally by Larry Kasanoff. So the good news is, instead of trying to find an entire lost movie, we're really just looking for 7 minutes of footage. And most of it has been accounted for. The trailer uses some of this animation. We found even more in demo reels of animators who worked on the project, and in promotional footage. As of right now, we are only missing an estimated 1 minute of footage from this much better version of Foodfight. So we've ruled out the existence of an entire lost movie, and we found most of what's been lost. But I am telling you, Foodfight is a hydra. You cut off one head, 2 more take its place. In 2021, Reddit user Jacob Lenstar made a post on the Lost Media subreddit containing this video. Did you see it? One more time. This amateur video, taken at the 2006 E3 Gaming Expo, shows the booth for Take-Two Interactive. Among the games being showcased is a playable demo of Foodfight, the game. But somehow, this is the only video of their booth that shows this previously unheard of game. And until recently, this was the only proof that a Foodfight game was ever in development. The original plan was for the game to be developed by Midway Games West in 2001, but they moved away from the project in the concept phase. The game was then passed to Cat Daddy Studios, a game dev owned by Take-Two, planned for a spring 2007 release, during one of Foodfight's many missed release windows. The game was a 3D platformer where you play as Dex Dogtective, with some on-rail flying sections where you play as Daredevil Dan, and a handful of mini-games. Developed for the PS2, GameCube, and Game Boy Advance, with the movie's voice cast returning. We currently have no evidence that the Game Boy Advance version was ever in development, and because of the hardware limitations, the game would likely have to be completely different from its PS2 and GameCube counterparts. It was recently found that storyboard artist Jason Long has development documents available on his website that shed some light on the project. The plan was to use the brands in creative ways, like for example, Hamburger Helper's hand mascot would be used to access shortcuts. Weapons were going to be based on things found in a supermarket. A Pringles can could be used as a rocket launcher of sorts, and there was a bow and arrow that would use lollipops and matches for ammo. There were even some mini games based on some of the major brands. A Space Invader type game with the M&Ms, a cattle wrangling game with the Twinkie mascot, a food fight game with Chef Boyardee, and a variety of games with the Jolly Green Giant. Foodfight the game was so far in development that a playable demo was available at the 2006 E3 as part of Take-Two's display. And even though the game was part of a display for a sizable developer, it received no press or even an official announcement of any kind. The game seems to have been quietly cancelled as production on Foodfight got worse. Ziggy Kashmir, who has been one of the leading figures in Foodfight Lost Media, was able to get in contact with the head of Cat Daddy Studios, who kindly provided Ziggy with everything they have from the Foodfight game. Ziggy posted this mountain of content to the Internet Archive, but sadly, Cat Daddy Studio no longer has the playable demo seen at E3. To give you an idea of how rough development was on Foodfight, mainly due to the mismanagement under Larry Kasanoff, there were 2 points during production where Foodfight merch was released. Between 2007 and 2008, and in 2012. I'm guessing they had contracts that forced them to drop Foodfight merch even though the movie wasn't out yet. Then when the movie was finally released, all remaining merch was offloaded. And they must have made a ton of these, because plushies were found everywhere. If you remember, in 2014 there was that story of a kid getting stuck in a claw machine. The toy that little man was trying to get was a Cheezel the Weasel plush from Foodfight. And you can find plenty of the merch online, but there were also a handful of Foodfight books that have been much harder to come by. We've known about them for a while, but until recently, not many of them have been archived. There's Foodfight Deluxe Sound Storybook, Foodfight I Can Find It, Foodfight the Junior Novelization, and a series of smaller books published by Random House that have yet to be accounted for. Dare the Day, Top Dog, When Good Food Goes Bad, Mission Marketropolis, and The Secrets Inside. None of the books by Random House have ever been found. No copies in any library, none for sale online, and no sightings in the wild. So either these books were not published, or they're just rarities we haven't found yet. But recently we have preserved the other books, mainly due to the efforts of Tiffany Amber, who was kind enough to share them online and give a deep analysis of each. Link in the description. Foodfight the Deluxe Soundbook is a picture book that plays sound effects for certain parts of the story. The plot's basically identical, but the real oddity is the sounds themselves. Rather than being taken from the movie, they were made for the book using sound-alikes. And they really captured the essence of Foodfight right here, all the sounds we know and love.
I've got a special delivery.
I'm exquisite!
Hold your anchor!
Dare the day and fly away!
Goodbye!
1, 12, 1,
Oh, I might be splitting!
Vive la resistance!
Foodfight I Can Find It is part of the I Can Find It series of children's books. They're like those hidden object books you'd find in highlights. It uses characters and scenes from the movie, but with a much less nightmare-inducing art style. It's also full of weird little characters that I never noticed in the movie. Like, I do not think this dude with toast on his head was ever in Foodfight. I think I would have noticed him. The book follows the movie but with some differences. In the scene where Dex and Daredevil Dan are trapped in a dryer, the book shows them in a washer, and near the end of the book there's a scene where the store floods. One theory put forward by the blog F Yeah Foodfight suggests that these scenes were in the original Foodfight script, but had to be changed because it was too difficult to animate water. And finally, Foodfight, the junior novelization. This one is the most substantial of the Foodfight books. It was published in 2008, and there are some remarkable differences from it and the 2012 movie. They remove all the awkward sex jokes, but the book isn't allowed to say any of the brand names, so they have to tiptoe around them. They say something like, "The large bird with glasses said, 'We're in a pickle now,'" which is a clear reference to the stork from Velocic Pickles. And as much as I want to blame Foodfight for not properly securing the rights to use these brands, it is common practice in books like this to avoid using brand names. But despite this restriction, the junior novelization fleshes out the world in ways only a book can. They clarify that during the day the food icons are still alive inside their packaging and can see out into the real world. It gives names to characters that we previously didn't know and clarifies what brand certain characters belong to. It makes it clear that when brands die in the food world, they're represented in the real world as having expired or their packaging damaged. They add the detail that brand X products are toxic to humans, which gives the story some higher stakes, and there are some scenes that are greatly expanded on in the book. Like the part where Dex and Dan are riding on the soda bottle is part of a much bigger chase sequence where they end up with Polar Penguin and ride on his toboggan, causing an avalanche. But the best change in the junior novelization is the ending. After defeating Brand X and saving the day, the movie ends with Dex and Sunshine Goodness getting married. But the book shows the real-world aftermath of the food fight, and then cuts to a month later, where a delivery arrives to the store. The new product, Cinnamon Sleuth cereal, now with Sunshine Goodness raisins. A much cuter way of showing that they got married than just showing their wedding. Now, if the revelation of a food fight video game and a novelization weren't enough, we haven't even covered the biggest discovery yet. Ziggy Cashmere is back at it again with another unbelievable find. In May 2024, Ziggy got their hands on an hour-long workprint of Food Fight, dated August 2005. A workprint is basically a rough draft of a movie. It could include stock footage, storyboards, test footage, and placeholder dialogue. They're made to see how a movie flows and to make sure everything makes sense, or to help guide the editing process. But in the case of Food Fight, as you might expect, its workprint is very rough, and it was shown off to potential investors. It uses dialogue from a table read of the script, a few fully animated clips from the stolen Sizzle Reel, and is almost entirely composed of storyboards and these bizarre 3D Photoshop storyboards. These monstrosities were made at the request of Larry Kasanoff, who didn't like the way storyboards looked and thought investors wouldn't understand them. I don't think I have to tell you that these look way worse than any storyboard. Storyboards show movement, changes in camera angle, facial expressions, and use shorthand that any animator would understand. But this 3D slop gives us nothing. In this workprint, we get to see the infamous peanut envy line that pushed the Mars Corporation to cut ties with the movie, a scene that uses some truly horrendous test animation.
So my therapist says I'm suffering from peanut envy.
It also has this placeholder text for scenes that aren't completed yet, and this is common in workprints. But this broke me. The text is white on a white background. If I was an investor and saw this, it would be a red flag. I understand unfinished animation, temporary audio, and whatever this is, but someone watched this workprint before showing it to others and thought white on white was acceptable. Maybe I'm just a jerk in all this, but this level of incompetence tells me they cannot be trusted with a project this big. But moving on, the workprint does do some things better than the movie. First, almost everything in the food world takes place at night, which makes sense since they come to life at night when the store closes. The workprint shows a scene of that bottle chase I mentioned from the novelization, and we get a genuinely funny joke that was cut from the movie.
Can you fly one of these?
Does a squirrel chew his nuts?
I think this joke is perfect. It fits the movie's oddly raunchy tone without crossing the line in the way the movie tends to. And the workprint had so much more fun with the product placement. The best example is a moment with the Oscar Mayer Wiener mascot. In a scene meant to pay homage to Casablanca, Brand X is trying to get everyone to sing their brand's anthem, while the good guys sing their own anthem louder as an act of defiance. In the movie, they just sing a generic song, but in the workprint, they sing the Oscar Mayer Wiener song in defiance, and it is so much more effective. And there's another Casablanca reference, something that happens way too much in this movie for some reason, but this one is really great, and I'm not sure why they cut it.
Whatever happens, Sunshine, we'll always have produce.
We'll always have Paris.
And the workprint's ending is a combination of the final movie and the novelization. We get the scene with the new Cinnamon Sleuth cereal with Sunshine Goodness raisins, and the movie ends with all the brands celebrating Dex and Sunshine's wedding. But all in all, with this work print, it is no wonder they had a hard time making this movie. I cannot imagine anyone funding this mess. These are all unbelievable discoveries, many of which I did not think were possible, but Ziggy Kashmir did not stop there. In addition to the version of Foodfight 7 years before it would officially drop, Ziggy gave the world access to the film assets from early in development, along with bloopers and concept art. Among this look at the inner workings of Foodfight is the long-rumored nude render of the movie's villain, Lady X, that Larry Kasanoff personally requested. And I am telling you, this thing has more attention to detail than anything in the movie. It looks like Kasanoff had a guy spend a full week on just this render alone. Real degenerate kind of behavior that anyone familiar with the story of Foodfight would not be surprised by, and really embodies the working conditions the people had to deal with making this movie. Now, I want to tell you that this is the end of the Foodfight saga. We're only missing about a minute of the lost 7-minute Sizzle Reel. We're looking for the playable demo of Foodfight the game, and a few books that might not exist. But if my experience with this movie has taught me anything, this is not the last we will hear of Foodfight, the worst animated movie ever made. Thank you so much for watching, and thanks to Factor for sponsoring this video. Leave your suggestions for future videos in the comments, and let me know if you want me to make videos about Lost Wave. These are the mysterious and unidentified songs that no one can figure out where they came from. Things like that. And a big shout out to my top tier Patreon supporters. Can you say Rocco Mafleur, Miss Dana, Odesta Honeycrisp, Otterly Happy, and Vinny Cataldo? Thank you all so much. This is Mike with All Things Lost. I'll see you soon.